In three.
I won't be in the way.
And we're rolling.
It's the output from the projector.
Yeah, it needs to be shown probably. No, don't think so.
Kind of, little bit. It did run, still.
Hang on, your dress is catching fire.
Shut up.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
Okay. Yeah, that. the information that I've put together, part of it is to do with the forum that we'll be appearing at. So it's probably going to sound a little bit strange, and I'll try really hard not to just read it. Okay. I'll just start off by giving a little bit of information about myself and where my photographic journey started. I've always owned a camera, but nothing really serious, and always been a happy snapper. And that changed the day my sister-in-law took a photo of my 6-month-old son, who's now 22, with her Minolta SLR. I decided then that when my lovely little Kodak died, I was getting an SLR. And not long after, it did actually die, and I promised I didn't sabotage it. When I eventually got my camera, I read everything about it and basically learnt how to use it, but I was still taking crappy photos. Next step, join a camera club. And that was basically one of the best decisions that I have made. A camera club's a great place to learn how to make our photos better. And that's where I learned about composition and the rules of photography, all with the emphasis being on the technical side of the image. Now I know all about the technicalities of the photographic rules, but it had never been explained to me exactly what the purpose of what the rules were for, other than it made a stronger image. That was until I attended a forum in Townsville a few years ago in a very similar format to the forum that we're actually going to be attending in Emerald. One of the presentations explained the purpose of these rules so simply that a light bulb went off, and that was they present a pleasing sense of harmony within the photo. I was also exposed to a lot of different ideas and visions, and first became aware of the judge's manual that the PSQ Judges Executive had put together, encouraging judges to look at the artistic and emotional content in an image first. I came away from that forum very enthused, and having judged some of our club competitions, thought, yeah, I could become a PSQ judge. Well, it took a little while for me to get the ball rolling, as self-doubt creeps in a lot. And with my sister nagging me, I finally got my act together. My first judging was held at the club, and even though I had done them before, for some reason this time I was quite nervous. I think it was for the simple fact that it was being recorded. My second judging, nerve-wracking again, went fairly well under the guidance of my mentor. And being at my sister's club and within familiar surrounds and some people that I knew made me feel a little bit more at ease. With positive comments and feedback coming in, I felt pretty good with what I had achieved. And with that experience in the back of my mind, I then did my third judging, which was a distance judging. Now with the distance judging, basically what happens is the club sends you a pile of images that you basically go through and write up critiques, and it can be quite time consuming and quite a little bit more difficult sometimes than what you would imagine. Anyway, I sent my comments and and the images off to my mentor and awaited for his phone call. I certainly wasn't expecting to hear what he said, and it shook me a little bit. There's that self-doubt again, and that'll teach me for being pretty pleased with myself. His biggest concern was that I wasn't seeing or interpreting the photographer's intention or emotion, and he was right. I had fallen back into my old ways of only looking at the technical sides of things again. This was probably the best thing that could have happened, because I've never forgotten that component in image viewing ever again. It also made me think about the reasons and intentions of photos that I have taken and have taken in the past. And it has been interesting to go back and look at these images that never really worked and study them and try and work out why I took the image in the first place. Sometimes when I'm about to take a photo, I will question myself as to why I'm taking it, but most of the times I creep back into the old habits and just click away and be very lazy. Oh, by the way, have I told you I am a very lazy photographer? Attending judges' forums has also been a valuable exercise in learning more about the craft of judging photos and interpreting and improving my technique. And it was at one particular forum that it was wonderful to listen to the presentation of one particular judge as he spoke about the judging of beginners' images and the enthusiasm that he had for these photos. Photos that more experienced photographers would probably deem as very ordinary and average, even though that's where we all started. One last comment that he made about these images has struck with me and has also changed the way in how I evaluate photos, and that is, every image is a gift. So now when I'm doing distance judging or judging photos and it's a beginner's photo and I look at it and I think, I've got to say something positive about this image. And that's why I stop myself and I say to myself, every image is a gift. And then it's very easy to do. The thing a PSQ judge has to do is interpret the photographer's intention or emotion, and if they haven't quite managed to achieve it, to give suggestions on how they can possibly achieve it, or give them ideas on what they can try next time. And speaking of interpreting images, I'm about to go out on a limb now and show some images that I have taken that haven't worked out so well. And I've tried to go back and interpret these images as to why I've taken them in the first place. Mind you, I've looked at some of them and thought, what on earth were you thinking when you took this one? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to interpret my thoughts, and any suggestions that you may have are very much appreciated. Or maybe you'll just plain tell me I should have walked away. Thank you.
It might be a gift to something we don't like.
Yes, exactly. Okay. I think most people probably know where this was taken. Yes, Keeglesborough. Yeah. The reflection is what attracted me basically with this image. It was a horrible, horrible day, and my sister was visiting, and whenever my sister visits, we have to go take photographs no matter what the weather. Anyway, I think the lighting was probably quite good with this, because it's a bit hard to see on the screen here, but there's a lot more detail and colour in the rock area there, and that was due to the soft lighting. But the reflections basically were the attraction. Anybody got any suggestions as to what I could have done to improve it? Because it's still an average, very average image. My thinking was it's a bit cramped, and that line there is a little bit too central. So I should have probably stepped back and had a little bit more room down the bottom, quite possibly.
Took it in postcard.
In landscape, yes, landscape would have been another good way to do it as well. And I actually went back and checked it, and I haven't cropped it. I've actually taken it like that, basically. This is an old image, and a really good example of me being a very lazy photographer. That is what I think attracted me. Like I said, I can't remember. And it's basically the contrast of the green on the timber. And no amount of cropping is going to help that, because you end up with such a tiny little image. So basically I should have zoomed with my feet and got in a bit closer. that was the focal point for me in this image. And again, just a stand, saw that, took the shot, didn't really think too much about it. It's a bit hard to see on here, but down the bottom here, there's the Channel 7 logo, and I think that was included as well, thinking that, you know, it was the Channel 7 logo in Sydney. But it technically is a bit of a distraction, and of course we've got the overhang up here. Does anyone want to offer any critique as to what could possibly help? I have played around with it.
My eye goes straight to those lines going up.
Yep.
I didn't even see that light spot, please.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, exactly. So
We've
what?
tried to get closer and shoot upwards.
Yep. Sometimes, but that can change the shape of of that. I found that with trees as well.
Left and outside there, shoot
Yep.
upwards.
Yeah. But
I think
that's
it laughs at me playing it.
but that's the image that I ended up with.
He's uninsured.
That's reflection.
Yes, yes. So basically what grabbed me was the fact that it's the contrast of the old and the new building, because that's an old building reflected in the new, and there's a lot more detail on the screen here. But anyway, I did a crop to get rid of the overhang completely, but that didn't really work because it shifted the position of the building. So basically I cropped out the Channel 7 logo, and then cropped a little bit, and then cloned out what was left of the overhang. And that's the result. So it's still not perfect, but it's a little bit better. It is more obvious, see, that's the whole point. So that's basically what I've sort of done with this exercise, is to go back and look at it and, okay, what was it that actually grabbed me, and how can I change the photo so that my intention is clear in the image. This is actually taken at the same place as the other line and the photo, and the repetition and the texture and all the pattern is what grabbed me, and I quite like the framing around it, but realistically it's really quite busy. There's no real focal point.
I like it.
The
Like
only
it is.
thing I could probably have done, because as again I was out with my sister, is talked her into climbing up and propping in the middle there somehow. I don't think she would have somehow. Hubby and I were exploring the base of Sydney Harbour Bridge.
I was gonna say, I know those.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And actually, if you really know those steps, you'll realise that it's been flipped as well. So I've sort of done a little bit to try and improve it.
That's in Harrington Street somewhere.
I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, I did part of my apprenticeship just up
Yep,
there somewhere. Yeah.
yep.
Very close.
Yeah, so texture and leading lines is what attracted me here. You know, all that lovely sandstone. We don't get any sandstone in Mackay. In hindsight, I think I should have probably gotten rid of that wall, and it's lucky on that screen it's dark. It's not as noticeable as it is on this screen here. But what I should have done is got hubby to walk up the steps and just prop so that all I could see was his feet sticking out. And that would have added a little bit of intrigue to the photo. I made it a little bit better than the bland photo that it is. So that's the trick to some photos as well, is getting the person to stop and look at it a little bit longer, even if they can't work out what it is, but even just to ask the question, what was he doing, or where was he going, things like that. I've called this photo Fern Claw, and mainly because of the dying fern leaf, which looks like a claw, looks like it's crawling out over the log. And one of the earlier photos of mine, again, it doesn't look too bad because of the darkness of it, but the background's really, really busy, and I probably should have used a different aperture, maybe shifted position, so that the fern itself, the fern leaf itself, was a little bit more prominent. Anybody else got any suggestions? There's not much you could really do with it, I don't think. The texture of the bricks and the roof line is what grabbed me, but I just felt that it was just a little bit busy, and I was thinking along the lines that it was the colour that was making it a little bit busy, so I decided to convert it to black and white. And after I did that, I realised that it wasn't the colour that made it busy, it was the clouds that made it busy. And so I should probably go back and replace the sky. And I think if I did that, even in the colour version, just had a plain blue sky, that colour version would probably work a lot better as well. This one, the texture of the rocks and the plant, the contrast between the shapes of the plant and the rocks was the attraction here. Again, felt that the image was a bit busy, so I converted it to black and white again, and it still doesn't work. It's not quite as dark on the computer screen, so you can see a lot more detail in the rocks and what have you. Again, the clouds are, I think, what make it busy, and I wouldn't so much replace it with a clear blue sky, as it's going to compete with the darkness of the rock. So I think if I'd had a more overcast day, where there was no details in the cloud, so the sky was more white, would probably work a little bit better with that. Anyone else got any suggestions?
Probably lighten up those.
Lighten up the plans
The black and white.
on the black and white,
Yeah, like dodgers,
so they stand out a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll actually go back and try that. This is taken inside Farley Mill, and I love the mood that the steam and the lighting creates here. It is a favourite image of mine, but not too many other people actually like it. And I think after looking at it, I haven't looked at it in a long time, so coming back and looking at it again, I realised that that structure there sort of stops you from moving too far into the image. So if I'd actually shifted position and got a bit more of a view as to what was happening or what the image was about,
Maybe pop it with the outside also, maybe between those two things rather than the left-hand side is dead.
so get rid of that.
Yeah, just go to that line.
Yep.
What time of day was that, Mark?
That probably would have been after 6. We went through just privately. We knew the daughter of the manager there, so she took us through. So yeah, it was about I think 6 o'clock when we first started.
Yeah, it's a nice light in there. I went through there last weekend.
Yep.
And it was much lighter than that.
Yeah, it is lighter on this screen. It's
Yeah, we went through about 9 o'clock or something.
Yeah. So you probably would have been getting closer to 7, so it would have been dark outside when we went through. Again, textures, leading lines. I thought that the colour might have been a bit distracting and converted it to black and white, but that's when I discovered that it was the colours, I think, that grabbed my attention. The blue reflecting in the water there. Not much you could probably do with it. It probably would have been better if I had the foreground a little bit more in focus. But I think that area there was my intention. I've tried cropping it and what have you, and it doesn't really work too well. Any suggestions? Not really? Not much you can do with it. Maybe I should have been a little bit more dedicated and got down on my belly or something.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, lazy again. That was the focal point. when I go back and look at it, that's what attracted me. But it's just, oh, there's a shot, click. So I really should have walked in. I have actually cropped that, and it does improve it a little bit, but if it actually stepped over the log and stood inside and moved around it and got some different angles, I would have probably found a shot that worked a little bit better. Okay, anyone who knows me well knows I love trees, and especially dead trees. And the foreground on the computer screen is a lot lighter than that. I love the way their form is silhouetted against the sky. I should have probably climbed through the barbed wire fence and got a bit closer to it and shot up the tree. But as I've known with trees, I've actually done that, shifted position, got closer and what have you, and the form of the tree changes. And sometimes what actually attracts you is the form that it's showing in the spot that you're standing at, and sometimes it's just no way around getting the shot that you want. Okay, lovely leading lines, and you can actually see it better. This is when I turned around to take this photo, that's what I saw. The dead tree in the distance. So, yeah, after I took the shot and looked at the screen on the back of my camera, I thought, no, that's not working, you can't see the blasted thing. So then I started to rethink what I was doing and what really, what other elements were in the image that I could make it work better. And then I noticed the sign here. I love the clouds on the mountains, but from the position that I was in, the lens that I had on, I've decided then to make that more of a focal point and did this. So we've still got a little bit of cloud in the background, and you can still sort of see my tree. But that definitely works a lot better than the image before. One of my photos, I think, I'm finding texture is a big attraction for me. Most of these seem to be about texture, and that's definitely one of them. I have tried cropping it. It's not a bad image in itself. I think probably a crop would work better, make the footprint a little bit more prominent.
Is that a female foot or?
It is a female foot. It's my sister's. Yeah, she's got a big foot. This area here I really liked as well, but I'm unsure. I think it just takes away from it a little bit. Any suggestions? Bin it, yeah. I should have walked away.
What's it do for much longer?
Yeah, I'm a belly again. I don't do that very often. Here's another one where I should have got on my belly, I think. Not very dedicated. Mangrove tree. Mangrove tree. When I was practicing this, I kept saying mango for whatever reason. That was the focal point. It wasn't until after I was sort of studying it more I noticed, because I figured the lone mangrove tree, but there's a little one there and there's a little one there, so it's not so lone. I pulled it out, yeah. Pulled it out, that would have went down well with all the other photographers around me. I'm sure John would have had something to say. Also, the leading lines, and then I included a bit of the background to sort of give a sense of place and what have you. But technically, that is what I saw. So I think the rest of it is a bit of a distraction. So I should have probably been dedicated, got down on my belly, and shifted my viewpoint.
You'll have to get a camera with a tilting back view frame.
Yes.
That'll save you getting down.
Yes. I have got one of those angle viewfinders, but I find it so hard to use. It stays in the cupboard. And the mangrove roots. Now this I've got a series of photos here. This is how I tend to go, and thank goodness for digital, I'm not wasting film. The tree roots were what attracted me. So I took the shot and then thought, oh, that looks crappy. And then recomposed, and that's sort of not too bad. And ended up with this one, which is better, but it's still not perfect. As you can see, we had houses in the background, and ideally, that's what that tree there is what grabbed my attention. So I should basically have moved around a little bit more and tried to isolate it a little bit. Coming from this side would have been difficult because we would have got the trees, so maybe I should have gone for a walk right round the other side and tried it from all different angles. Again, being lazy. The colours and the contrast of the black gate against the red walls is what grabbed me. Ashamed about the busy top, so I cropped it, which had improved it a little bit, and that's really dark compared to what it is on the screen. Works a little bit better, but because it's cropped in closer, you can still see the busy background. I've got an idea of what I could have tried. I'm not sure whether it would have worked or not. Has anybody got any suggestions what I could have attempted to there?
Yeah,
Put it right in front of it. My way of thinking is maybe use a little bit of fill flash and drop the ambient exposure to hopefully darken the background. But with the nature of the paint, I'm not too sure whether it would have worked. You would have seen the flash flare possibly in the gate.
Top of the gates across.
I tried to straighten it, and I was getting very frustrated with it, and again, very what's the word? Not dedicated. Oh, that'll do. That's what grabbed my attention. Absolutely fascinated with that piece of artwork in the sky, and I walked all around it, and of course, with the nature of the piece of artwork that it was, changing positions just made it all gobbledygook. You had to actually view it from a certain angle to actually see what it was. I actually tried zooming in on it, which just didn't work. If we had a completely overcast day, it would have stood out a little bit better. So, because of the day that we had, I sort of did the best that I could and decided to include the art gallery building in there to give a bit of a sense of place. And like I said, these are very average images that I have taken.
What is it? How they
What was that?
get them in the sky? What is it?
There are wires coming from, I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure there would have been poles set up to actually have it in place. And I think from what I had heard, they change the artwork each week, this particular display that they had.
You'd be keen to get the Sydney Noodle then, when they
What was
put that
that?
up. The Sydney Noodle.
Sydney Noodle.
Oh, I haven't built it yet, but they've done some concept artwork, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
very similar, but it's this big. Anyway, Google it.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I've seen it.
You've seen it?
It was in the paper.
Yes.
A lot of people
When
didn't like it.
I
I thought it was
actually
quite
zoomed
nice.
in and took a photo of just the art piece of artwork, it just basically became a photograph of someone else's artwork, which isn't very interesting at all. Again, another tree. This is my sister's tree, and I absolutely love it. I love the shape of it, and I have tried so many times to take a photograph of it and just haven't been successful just because of the position that it's in. And again, shifting position, it changes its shape. So I think the next time I go down and pay her a visit, I might take my chainsaw with me. Get rid of some of the distractions. I love the contrasting lines, and I think that was the original attraction. interaction. The fact that I've got the raindrops and what have you, I felt was a bit of a focal point and added interest, but doesn't really quite work so well. Different aperture, as you can see, I was down to 2.8, so I should have opened that up a little bit and got maybe a bit more of the raindrops in focus and had them fade off into the background a little bit more. Would have made it a lot more interesting, I think. Everyone agree? No? Yes? You do? You like it as
Looks
it is?
alright.
You're not looking all around them.
Looks alright.
Just focused on.
Okay, well that's interesting.
And that's one of the beauties of using that lower f-stop is you get that shallow field of plane focus.
Yeah, yeah.
The shelf focus is going to it's in focus, it's curved.
Yep.
Because it is curved, you find that'll be curved, so it follows the curve.
Yeah, well there you go. I've had that hidden away on my computer for ages because I just thought it was a very boring image, and I might go back and look at it a bit more now. Hey? Put a frog in there, yeah. John's manipulation. This one's not showing up real well either. It absolutely pops on this one, and it's the, oh sugar. There's a whole pot, the light reflecting off the tip of the stamen is so much brighter in the image, and that was the focal point. In the image on the computer screen, the background is, well, you can see it there anyway, it's a very, very similar colour, but it's actually brighter. My way of thinking would have been if I had a piece of card or something. It's a massive big hibiscus flower, and if I had held the piece of cardboard over the back and darkened the background, it would have popped a bit more. It's really hard to sort of see on this particular screen. You have to have a look at the computer image and see exactly what I'm talking about, just so that the stamen actually stands out from the background a little bit more. We all know where that is. Really, really liked the structure and the texture, and then the leading lines with that bit of concrete. It is, yeah, it's, these are old photos that I've gone back through. Yeah, so instead of, I actually cropped while I was there, and zoomed in a little bit and took that image. Again, it's a little bit dark on the screen, but yeah, the texture and the light and the form is what attracted me there. I should probably go back and crop out the wire. The only thing I find with this image, and I was using a macro lens, is with the depth of field, we've got multiple points that are in focus, which are sort of all over the place. So your eye tends to jump a little bit. If I'd been a little bit more organised and had my tripod with me, I could have probably either changed the f-stop to increase the depth of field, because I think it would have been hard to get a single focal point. So what I ended up doing is shifting position and taking a different area of it, and got that one. And basically that tip there is the only thing that's really in focus, and of course needs a little bit of cloning. But every time I look at that, I just want to reach in and pick that bit of fluff off the tip of it. So I thought, oh, why not do the exercise? So I actually went back and cloned it, and that looks a lot better. With a bit more detail on the computer to there. The water droplets, and basically the fact that the flower had been made a swimming pool is the focal point for me. Technically, that's why I think I took the photo. Of course, really bad position. I've cropped it, which makes it a little bit better. But if I'm really honest with myself, that's the focal point. So I should have shifted my position and maybe not actually been over the top of the photo, but the flower, but just been a little bit higher so we saw more of the water. So there's no doubt in the viewer's eye that that's what my intention was when I took that photo. The light hitting the fluffiness of the thistle really grabbed my attention. I have played with it and I think I've improved it. The pods, because of their darkness and what have you, contrast a little bit and I think take your eye away from the fluffiness, and that's what attracted me when I first took the photo. So I've converted it to black and white and cropped it. And I think I've improved it. And I've actually I've added a slight white vignette there as well. So your eye basically goes to that there. So I guess it does show up. That's what grabbed my attention when I saw this. And then I saw this and I thought, oh, that'll be good in the photo too. But personally, I think that's a distraction.
So, Marg, looking back over your work and looking at it like this evaluative process, do you think like you've learnt, like going forward from now, like these lessons you're learning, do you think you'll put that into from the evaluative perspective?
Most times, like I said, I'm very lazy and I think we're all creatures of habit, so I do have a tendency to just fall back into, oh, I like how that looks and not think. But I'm finding while I'm there, I will, when I have a look at the photo that I've taken, think, okay, that doesn't work, and then start thinking about it. So I have changed, but I do tend to fall back into old habits and then stop myself and move forward. So I'm one of these people who, if I decide to do something, it takes me probably 2 weeks to a month to get myself organised and actually motivated. So ask me in a year's time and I probably might be there. I actually tried planing that out. Really hard to do. I did a really sloppy job just to see what it looked like. Me personally, I felt it was better because it keeps dragging my eye away, and that was my intention when I took the photo. Anybody else got any suggestions, any thoughts on it? Big piano? Yep. Yep. Yeah, so that was another thing too, because I thought, oh, that looks, a little bit of framing in there, but yeah, I think you're probably right. It's really unnecessary. Yes, it's a bird. Yeah. So I'll go home and I'll try that too. Yeah, leading lines. Really probably should have had something maybe down the bottom. This is a good example of zooming with your feet. So if you notice there, that focal length is 42 mil, and the next image, which I think works a little bit better. Okay.
You can see that wing a little better in that one?
Yeah.
Yes, and the focal length is actually smaller. So I've actually zoomed back and moved a bit closer. So, and that's the thing with focal length and what have you. If you stand in one spot and just zoom, you don't get the full perspective. Sometimes I think as an exercise when you're taking photographs, you should zoom, but then move. So if you've got certain elements framed in your photo when you zoom, then zoom back out and then move yourself to contain those same elements, and you'll get a different perspective in your image. It's just something worthwhile to have a look at, and I think you'll be surprised with the difference that you get. showing up well at all. Lots of reflections, that was the main attraction. Texture in the trees, but really, really busy. And again, that line is too horizontal. So I actually refocused, and that looks a bit better, I think. Except I should have gotten rid of the branch. And I don't know that shifting my position would have helped, because these trees are sort of more prominent and closer, and I certainly wasn't getting in the water and shifting it.
Can I say something really silly?
Yes,
I've got the exact same photo
yep.
and swore at those exact same branches.
Yeah, so that definitely works a lot better.
Is that on Keely's Road?
Yes,
Yeah, it's hard to sort of capture what you're looking at with the camera.
it is really, really hard, especially when you've got a lot of detail in the image to really get a perspective on something that's sort of pleasing. And this one, actually probably, even though it's dark, it shows up better. My sister and I were photographing with the light on the buildings there. This is taken at Malulaba, and I was just absolutely fascinated with how the sunlight was still reflecting off those buildings. No, we're on the foreshore, so it actually comes around. I did have a look on the map because I was trying to work out where we were. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Like I said, I looked on the map, but it's gone. Also what fascinated me was the moonlight on the waves, and you can see little bits of it here. And to my way of thinking, it's actually a little bit of a distraction. I should probably have slowed my shutter speed down a little bit so there's not as much detail, because that is what I was looking at. And thinking back on it, because it was so dark and the sunlight was still shining on those buildings. So I went back to the metadata to see what time it was when I actually took the photo. And it was 5:30 in the afternoon. I thought, that can't be right. But it was in winter time. So when the sun goes down, it gets dark really, really quickly. Yes. It's a shame that it's not as bright on the computer screen. But yeah, that's basically it. I could have added some more images, but I didn't want to bore you for too long. Yeah. No suggestions for that one at all?
If you cropped it in half and just focused on the
Yep.
buildings, you would have got what you're looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah. Got rid of that.
It's
that
all
move.
it's all irrelevant to the foreground, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the bad habit that I have sometimes. I'll see my focal point, and then I'll notice other things. I'll think, oh, that's fascinating, or that's interesting, and it's not really. Yeah, so another panorama would definitely help that. What was that? Okay, so crop down here.
Isn't that distracting from what you're looking at? That's a distraction.
Yeah.
I'd take it right out above that.
Yeah. Two different views. Yep.
Just below those
I would
reflections.
run two graduated filters over it. I would crop below the white
Yeah.
and put a Gaussian blur over the bottom section,
Yep.
and then put a slight darkness over it with brightness and contrast. And again, graduated filter, so you brought it in from the bottom to just take the edge off the white.
Yeah.
Do you remember how long those buildings were like that? Like,
It was for ages. It really, really was.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I thought they were lights. I didn't realise they were reflections
No,
from the
it's
sun.
sunlight
Yeah, that's
reflecting
it.
off them. I'm
Yeah.
not too sure what number that was, because I took a heap of them, because it just absolutely blew me away that it was still reflecting
Still
light.
reflecting.
It probably would have stayed there. I think we ended up packing up because it was getting too cold and it was still reflecting the light.
Wow.
So yeah, that was taken at 5:30. So I reckon probably 4:45, 10:50, and that was still
Still
showing
glowing.
light, basically. And of course, the darker it got, it didn't need as much light to stand out as well, basically. Yes, but anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for viewing.
So,
Yes.
thank you.
Sorry.
No, because it's been interesting, like for you anyway, like going back over and re-evaluating. So, what advice for the group, while we've got everyone, that through this process would you have for looking back past, like on our past images, and to improve our, ourselves moving forward? I suppose, like from your.
Well, what I basically did was go back and look at them and try and work out what it was that attracted me to that image in the first place.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the key thing, that you have to work out exactly why you're taking that photograph, and then go from there. Because unless you know why you're taking it, you can't really improve on to get what you want across, basically. And that's the whole point of like I said earlier with the judges manual and the PSQ judging. They're pushing their judges to first look at photographers' intention and emotional content in their image. Whereas, and they still have trouble with the old school judges who still judge on technicalities and dismiss images because they're not technically correct, and they don't try and interpret what photographers are doing. So they're actually pushing towards, I meant to bring along a judge's manual so you could have a look at, but the actual thing that they state, that the judge's job basically is to assist in photographers perfecting their art in photography, basically. So it's looking more on the artistic side of things. So, but yeah, in answering your question, Dan, I think about why you're taking the photo and what it is in that photo that is important to you, and then you can possibly move on from there. And like I said, I still just see something that grabs me and click. And then I stop and think about, okay, why did I take that photo? Instead of seeing it, saying, okay, that's what's grabbed my attention, and then start composing. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, ask me in a year's time, I might be there.
We'll find out what night you're going to be judging photographs. Take a photo of a tree and you could win.
Dead tree.
Exactly.
Is there like, do you judge by a set of criteria?
Yeah, we do in the club.
Yep.
In our club competitions, we have, years ago, we used to judge with first, second and third. And basically, the better photographers would always win, so it was sort of discouraging for beginners. So now basically what we do is we have a bronze section, a silver section and a gold section. And photos are broken up into their various sections according to the criteria that we have set. Of course, we have B graders and A graders, and B graders we are a little bit more lenient with, because they're basically starting out. And that way, everybody gets a score, everybody gets feedback on their images, and as they get better, they can see whether their images are moving, are either staying in bronze, or they're actually moving up into silver, and they can actually see in themselves that they are progressing, basically, yeah. So yeah, we have a set criteria along those lines, and in judging as well, it is very difficult, and it's never ever going to happen that you'll have a judge that's completely impartial. There will always be images that you gravitate to, but you still have to judge the image on its merit as well. The technical aspects still do come in to it, but first and foremost, we have to try and work out what the photographer is trying to say in their photograph.
How much weight would they put on that? Like, would it be like 70% before it's everything?
Yeah, basically, if you look at the judge's manual, that is first and foremost. And then once you work out what they're trying to achieve, you then go into the technical sides of things as to whether they have achieved it. By working out what their intention is, you can then work out whether an image should be sharp or whether it needs to be blurry. whether it needs to be the rule of thirds or whether it needs to be central or what. So yeah, by working out what their intention is initially, then you look at the technical side of things to see whether they've achieved it well or haven't achieved it, basically. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, that's me done.
Thank you very much.
That photo there, the one tonight, we were coming into the mouth of the Yorba River
Yep.
in the boat.
Oh, okay.
And it was about as dark as that, but it was about 9:30 at night, it was really rough.
Yep.
And right in the middle of the channel is this sandbar that we suddenly saw about as close as that wave.
Yeah. Far out.
Yeah.
So your intention, it gives a different emotion to
And
what.
my
Well,
view
see,
of
now
the
that's-
whole thing is.
See, now that's
Yeah.
another thing with images too, is evoking emotion, and it evokes emotion differently in different people, basically. Yeah. Yes.
And see, the other thing is that Margaret was basically only, you're also judging an image within, like if you did nature, you have to comply
Yeah.
with guidelines. Or if you do a theme, you have to comply.
Yeah, nature is a whole different bag, and the side of emotion and intent is just completely out the window. Basically, it's rules and it's very strict. Similar lines to John's presentation with the National Geographic competition, very strict. And there are two bodies that have rules on nature photography competitions when it comes to international, and there's the Australian one and then there's the FIAC one. Now the Australian one's a little bit more lax in the fact that they will allow images of animals where there is the hand of man, where the animal has adapted to its environment. Whereas the FIAC one, there has to be no hand of man in it whatsoever. And the example that they usually give is like barn owls. You know, most places you take a photo of a barn owl's in a barn. So in a FIAC competition, that would be thrown out straight away, basically.
And that corresponds backwards to us here. If you had a butcher bird sitting on your railing, that doesn't qualify because he lives out there. It comes to man. But if it was a possum, then you're in a grey area and could probably approve that image.
Yeah, yes. Anyway. No worries.
And look, and seeing it on here and up on there as well, is that they do look completely different too. So
Yeah, well again, if you want to...
PGA did.
Do you have a profile?
Yes,
Oh,
I haven't profiled mine.
Is it? I'm doing it all shut.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried profiling?
Projector? No.
You can.
Yeah, I
and
know.
It makes so much difference.
Yeah,
You would see up there exactly what.
yeah, I have the
And it's
means,
very, very easy.
have the means to do it. We have been in the process of discussing for our club whether we would obtain a projector, because where we are, the rooms that we are, they have a TV, and I've plugged the computer into the TV, which has worked quite well. We tested a projector, but it was an old one and it wasn't sort of really successful. But I said to John before that I was quite impressed with this one, and with the situation of where our TV is, it isn't big enough, so people have to move closer. And I think this would probably work better for us than the TV idea anyway. So yeah, we'll investigate it, and I definitely will profile that projector. And it'll make it a lot better.
Even next weekend if you've got a projector, maybe that help. Say if you
Well,
don't have it,
yeah, well,
say
it's
I
sort of,
looked at it on the computer.
it's out of our hands because it's at the art gallery. And I think I'm on the first day. I'm not sure. I think there's someone before me, and then John's on the second day. So it's just basically you'll have to go and try and see. I might actually do the same what John's going to do and lighten the images, and at least then, because that's on full brightness on my monitor. So if I lighten them and they're too bright in the screen, I'll be able to back it off a little bit maybe on my computer. Yeah. So it's
Profile, or have you got?
the i1 Pro. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing, it's an unknown quantity. I don't know what projector that they've got out there, so it's just, we'll go out blind and
Doesn't take long.
yeah, but see, it's,
Try and find a home, something like that.
I haven't got one at home.
This one's mine, Mitch. Yeah, that's mine. I've never profiled.
There you go, I'll profile it for you, Dad. Or Mitch, or you sounded
You'd be profiling it.
To the-
to the computer.
So
Yeah.
if you use that next time, basically, you just
Yeah.
kind of plug that in.
it'll be right.
It'll be pretty.
It'll be right, yeah, so, so that's something that we've got to head down anyway and look into. So yeah, we're going to find out some details about that. Look into
right,
it.
Sarah.
Now, Margaret and I would also like to thank you for coming along and playing
Yes.
guinea pigs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank Dan for allowing us to come along and play guinea pigs.
Yeah, well, thanks Craig, my manager, for allowing me to allow you guys to come. Well, Craig, he's gone home, but
Yeah, I managed to get through without losing my voice, which was worrying the hell out of me.
But no, again, thank you for coming down and being a part of it all. And it's great to see sort of the support as well. So just thank you for joining.
No worries. Yeah.
But feel free to hang around, guys. If you want another cuppa, help yourself. Ask the guys any questions or anything like that as well.
I was going to say, I'll bring this up again if anyone wants to have a look at any of the images at all. If you want to have a look on the screen. Not on that screen, but on this screen. Yeah, turn it back on. Yeah, so if you want to have a look, you can just use the arrows and flick through them. Yeah, a lot more detail. On pamphlets for the emerald thing, if anyone wants to grab one and come along. There will be other speakers, other than seeing us again.
I'll actually run through the program for it. Because, yeah, on the first day there'll be a
Come and do that history one again.
What Makes Photographs Special by Ben Stoppel. That's and then the one that I alluded to in my...
And Ben was John and my mentor.
Ben and I had some significant discussions, would be the best way of putting it.
Ben is German too, so that gives a bit of an inclination.
I would say, I would have written something about an image, and Ben would say, "You said that, defend it."